Perfect. So once again, good morning, Shavua Tov. Thank you very much for joining us. The weekly Parsha, and this is a very special Parsha. The Parsha, there's quite a few stories that the Parsha talks about, but one of the stories is the story, the tragical story of the sin of the golden calf. And we know that the sin of the golden calf basically had a big impact on the status of the Jewish people there and then, because Israel left Egypt in order to receive the Torah. And after them receiving the Torah in Mount Sinai, the purpose was to go to Eretz Yisrael directly, straight away, straight after receiving the Torah. And in Eretz Yisrael to build the temple. And that will be the ultimate temple. We wouldn't have temple number 1, temple number 2, and then temple number 3. It would just be automatically the ultimate temple, and Mashiach would come. So the story of the sin of the golden calf is a tragical story. Because of that sin, Am Yisrael are suffering over 3,000 years, and they are going from exile to exile. In between, we did enjoy several hundred years of having a temple and Hashem's presence resting in Yerushalayim. But still, nevertheless, the ultimate goal did not happen because of this, the sin of the golden calf. And the question is, how could that be? How could it be that Am Yisrael listened to Hashem himself saying, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. Do not have other. They, after listening to this, how make this golden calf? How could they go and sin, doing this terrible sin of Avodah Zarah, idol worship? How could they do such a thing? After 40 days, Moshe patience to wait a few more hours, a day or two, they decided to build this golden calf, and we know that it was a part of Erev Rav that was involved in convincing the Jewish people. Erev Rav are Egypt, and they didn't really convert to Judaism with a full heart, and they basically caused a lot of problems during the journey of Am Yisrael leaving Egypt. And once again, this does not help Am Yisrael themselves. How could Am Yisrael sin with such a terrible sin? So, first of all, it's an interesting thing because we see throughout to idol worship. We know that in the times of several kings, and these are righteous people, these are great people, descendants of King David, they were big into idol worship. Certain kings says that King Menashe has no chelek l'olam haba. He doesn't have a part. He doesn't have a part in the world to come. And the reason that he doesn't have a part in the world to come is because he basically convinced and taught and helped Jews to worship idols. So it seems like there was something then in the air that caused people to want to worship idols. If we would think about it today in our days, this seems like a ridiculous idea. This seems like an idea that has the statue created the world. It's such a weird thought, but in those days they had it. And the reason that they had it is because Hashem always evens things out, which means Hashem always causes a challenge in the world. The purpose of the world is to overcome these challenges. The purpose in the world is to overcome nisyonot, as we call them, nisyonot, challenges. And things have to be even. When you have such a great revelation of godliness in the world, you've got to also have a revelation of the sitrach, or the other side, the impure side. Because otherwise, it would be so obvious to serve Hashem. Imagine, in the times of Beis Hamikdash, when King Menashe lived, you have the Beis Hamikdash, you have special miracles happening in Beis Hamikdash. Am Yisrael traveled 3 times a year to Beis Hamikdash. If there was nothing to challenge them, there would be no purpose of avodas Hashem. That Hashem, a person that is oved in the present, is constantly working and serving Hashem. It's always a challenge. And that's why when there's a great revelation, such as the temple, such as the miracles that happened in the temple, there's got to be a revelation of the Tumah. And today we don't have the revelation of this Tumah because we also don't have the revelation of godliness. We aren't able to see Hashem as they were able to see him then through those miracles. That is why we don't also face a challenge of seeing Avodah Zarah. But imagine in those days, the way that King Menashe behaved was that he basically, what he did was, he placed statues along the journey to Jerusalem. And then people said, you know what, I'll stop here and I'll worship this idol. I don't have to go all the way to Jerusalem. This is a more fun way of serving God. And it was a challenge because in those days they understood a bit more about it. There was some kind of power, some kind of tumah, impurity that these statues had that could trick people. Temple, during the time when the first temple was destroyed, as it was burning, the Gemara tells us that the scholars asked Hashem to burn the yetzer of idol worship. And Hashem burnt it. Since those days, 2 things happened. The first thing that happened is that we do not face this challenge of idol worshiping anymore. That's the immediate result of Hashem burning this yetzer, was that we don't have the yetzer anymore. We don't have this will or this challenge to go and worship idols. I do not know a person that wakes up in the morning and the first thing he wants to do is worship idols. And the second result, what also happened because of Hashem burning this yetzer, we don't have a high level of revelation of Hashem. We do not see Hashem in our lives. We've got to search for him very, very carefully. And then we maybe get a small hint through divine providence, through a private miracle. But it's not compared to what they had in those days. In those days, they could actually witness Hashem. They could go travel to Beis Hamikdash, and that would give them the strength for the other 6 months, let's say, or 4 months. They were able to basically see Hashem. That doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore because there is no challenge. But on the other hand, we face other challenges. We face other challenges as well. And this is why also we cannot judge them. So we cannot judge them means we cannot judge King Menashe. We also can't judge the people standing upon Mount Sinai. They just witnessed the great revelation of Hashem. Hashem himself saying the words, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. These words from Hashem himself contained a great and special revelation of godliness. The miracles that happened there around the mountain, the voices that they were able to see, the sights that they were able to hear, all represent a revelation of godliness. And against that, in order for the world to be not an easy world, because easy worlds we've got up above. Angels don't face challenges. That's not their mission. But in our world, the mission is to face challenges. And therefore, this challenge of on the one hand, seeing Hashem, but on the other hand, facing this attempt, this challenge, this desire to build a golden calf was a strong will and hopefully we don't suffer such a nisayon in our lives in any other aspect, because that was a very big nisayon. Once you have a great revelation, you have a great nisayon as well. Let's talk a bit more about what happened during this time of what happened as a result of this building the golden calf and worshiping idols. So it's so interesting. Hashem gave us the first tablets, and the first tablet, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down, sees what happens. He sees them dancing around this golden calf. He says, Am Yisrael are not worthy of accepting Torah, and therefore he breaks the tablets. He breaks the tablets. Am Yisrael are definitely disappointed, and the story is that the tribe of Levi went and killed those who worshiped the idols. After that, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, if it's up to me, I want to kill all the Jews and build a new Jewish nation from you. Your children, your grandchildren, we'll start it all from scratch, from the beginning. Moshe Rabbeinu, like a true leader, stands, and he doesn't give up on the nation, on his people. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells Hashem, if you wipe them out, you can wipe me out as well. And that is the beginning of we get a second chance. We get a second chance, and Moshe Rabbeinu goes up for another 40 days. He comes down on Yom Kippur, and after he came down, he brings with him the second luchos shniras, the second tablet. And the whole thing about the second tablets is very special, because the second tablets, as the Talmud tells us, that without the second tablets, we would not have had Torah Sheba'al Peh. The oral Torah, that wasn't part of the tablets. Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the tablets, the 10 commands, and he taught him the written Torah that we have, Sefer Torah that we use today, and that's it. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to receive the second tablets, Hashem gave him an additional gift. Hashem gave him also not only the tablets, not only the written Torah, but Hashem gave him oral Torah, which is basically the midrashim, which are interpretations to the written Torah. And this is the key to understanding, first of all, what basically, that it's not the end of the world what happened, and also the reason that Am Yisrael sinned in this sin of Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. So what is the second luchos? What is the second tablet? It's interesting to read, but when we learned in Parshas Yisrael, Hashem giving us the Torah, part of what happened there wasn't such a comfortable experience to the Jewish people. Because the Medrash tells us that basically, Kafa Aleim Har Kigigis, which means that Hashem basically lifted up the mountain, placed it over their heads, and Hashem said, you better receive the Torah, because if not, you will be buried over here. So although Am Yisrael came with this will, And they said, you know what, Hashem, we'll listen to what you say. We'll do what you say, and then we'll listen to what you say, which shows the complete will to observe Yiddishkeit. What basically happens is that they Am Yisrael basically are forced to do it. And because the fact that they were forced to receive the Torah, the Gemara tells us in Masechtas Shabbos that Am Yisrael has the ability to tell Hashem, we aren't obligated. You cannot punish us. We were forced to do it. And because we were forced to do it, if we don't do it, you cannot punish us. That is basically what happened after Matan Torah. Hashem forced us to receive the Torah. What happened during Purim, and we are about to approach Purim, starting with Purim Katan coming up this week. And then, of course, the second month of Adar will have the actual Purim itself. Am Yisrael, it says in the Megillah, Kimu Masha Kiblu. And what we understand from that, what the Mefarshim explain, is that Kimu Masha Kiblu is that Am Yisrael finally accepts the Torah out of their own will. Not because Hashem forced us and lifted up the mountain, but because we actually want to keep the Torah. And this is something that happened during Purim. During Purim, Am Yisrael said, we aren't going to convert to any other religion. We are going to stay Jews. And even though we might face death and we might be killed because of Achashverosh's order, nevertheless, we still are Jews and we're not going to convert. Here we can see, okay, you aren't forced anymore. And nevertheless, you like the idea of keeping the Jewish law. So this is a second level in Matan Torah. Starting off Parshas Yisro, which was the first way, the way Hashem basically forces us to receive the Torah. And if we would not receive the Torah, what would happen is that we would be buried over there. But right after that, times of Purim, truth is that it starts a bit before. But in the times of Purim, we clearly see it, that Am Yisrael wants to keep the Torah. Am Yisrael aren't forced to do it, but it's their own will and their own desire. That's the complete acceptance of the Torah. That's where we actually are fully in Judaism. And it starts a bit before. It starts when Hashem basically gives us the second tablets. Because the second tablets, as we said, they basically aren't only the written Torah, but they're also the oral Torah. What is the oral Torah? What is this other part of the Torah that Hashem gave us? So oral Torah, Torah Shabbat, is the fact that you and I and everyone else can understand in our way, in our understanding, in our minds, the laws of Hashem. Open a Gemara. What is a Gemara? It's a discussion that involves questions, answers, arguments between the rabbis in that generation, trying to understand the laws of the written Torah. The second time, bring us the oral Torah, are basically bringing us into the picture of Matan Torah. Until the second tablets, we only had the first tablets. When we had the first tablets, that was basically strictly Hashem's tablets, Hashem's Torah. We weren't involved as much. We just listened to Hashem saying, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. This is what you should do. Here's the mountain, and if you won't accept it, this will be the place where you would be buried. So this idea of the second tablets is basically Hashem saying, you know what? Am Yisrael have to also be in the picture. Am Yisrael also have to involve their own personal understanding, their own personal thinking in this great Torah that I gave them. This can't be something that's enforced upon them. This should be something that that connects to them. This is something that should that they should also have a certain say. Of course, we can't just make up whatever we want in the oral Torah. There are certain ways and rules that the Torah is interpreted. We cannot make up any rules. We cannot say, you know what, it says in the written Torah, this and that. I'll explain it the way I want. No. It's got to be, first of all, the tradition that you actually accepted it from your rabbi, and that rabbi from his rabbi, and that rabbi from his rabbi, until Moshe Rabbeinu himself, who actually knows the interpretation of the Torah. Sometimes there were rabbis that had different traditions, and that's why we have different opinions in Judaism. But it's all got to be connected to the laws and the rules of the way that we darshan the Torah, the way we explain the Torah. But once again, what is the purpose over here? The purpose over here is bringing Am Yisrael, making them involved as well. Join us, join this Sefer Torah, and let's learn it together. Let's understand it together. The midrashim, the tales, the stories, the halachos, the explanations, the questions, the answers, all of these things are basically the second tablets. The second tablets, Hashem says, you know what? First tablets, that was my show, was overwhelming. It did not last. Am Yisrael were, don't forget, Am Yisrael were in a place of Tumah, just a few days before, 49 days before. They were down in those Memtet Sha'arei Tumah, and the 49 levels of Tumah, and each and every day Hashem basically took them out of the levels of Tumah. But it was Israel themselves taking themselves and healing themselves. And that's what we missed. Now we can also understand what happened there during the sin of the golden calf. What was it? Why did they sin? Why did they make this golden calf? What was the purpose? Didn't they know that Hashem isn't interested? The truth is, of the first tablets. And they said, what is the purpose of the first tablets? Hashem giving us his orders. So why does it have to go through the leader, Moshe Rabbeinu? We're going to build this golden calf. And the golden calf will tell us what Hashem wants. They didn't build and make the golden calf and say, you know what, this is who created the world. That wasn't their true meaning. Their meaning was that the golden calf should be the one to lead us and to present us Hashem's commands, Hashem's wills, etc., etc. And they said it's better than Moshe Rabbeinu. If we aren't involved in the story, why to bring Moshe, who is a person that has his thoughts, has his traits, has his own personality? Let's go to someone who is truly objective. Let's take a calf. He has no, Hashem told him, and pass it on to us without interfering with his own understanding, with his own thoughts, and with his own personality. And Am Yisrael said, isn't this Hashem what you want? Didn't you, Hashem, just tell us these commands in a way where it's put upon us without us being involved? If so, then leave Moshe Rabbeinu out. Why do we need Moshe Rabbeinu? Let's just take the golden calf. He has no ability to talk his own thoughts and opinions. He has no real personality, no traits. And he'll lead us, he'll guide us through the desert. He's the best, perfect way to pass on your message. He won't interfere. And as we know, for example, Sefer Chumash Dvarim, right? The fifth Chumash is basically Moshe Rabbeinu repeating the previous Chumashim, starting from Chumash Shmos, basically, in his words. Why? Why to use Moshe Rabbeinu's words? Let the golden calf pass on the message without any interference. That is what they thought. That is why Am Yisrael sinned the golden calf just 40 days after hearing Hashem say, yes, because they said, you know what we are going to do is we're going to basically bring this leader, make this leader, create this leader who will pass on Hashem's commands, but without interfering. They had always this challenge with Moshe Rabbeinu. Is it you? Is it your will? Or is it Hashem's will? Kairach, we'll learn about it. Doesn't accept Moshe Rabbeinu as the leader. He says, this is you. You want to put your brother as the Kohen Gadol. You want to make yourself the leader. What about us? And this conflict causes them to say, you know what? Let's move Moshe Rabbeinu aside and bring this golden calf. But the truth is, and why was that such a big sin? Hashem wants Davka. In particular, Hashem wants Moshe Rabbeinu, a Jewish leader who has his own thoughts, his own mind, and he is the one to bring Hashem's word here into this world. That is the goal. That is the purpose. That is what Hashem truly wants, because once again, the goal is the second tablets involving us as well, involving our understanding, our personalities. That is the purpose of Moshe Rabbeinu. That is what he does. That's what a tzaddik does, right? Sometimes we might think, you know what? Why do I need to go and daven at the tzaddik's kever? Why do we need to go to the oil of the Rebbe? Shouldn't we directly contact Hashem? Shouldn't we pray directly to him? Yes, praying is a great thing. But when we do it through a tzaddik, when a tzaddik is over there to help us, to present our prayers towards Hashem, much higher. And that is why, once again, there's no point in having a golden calf to just bring automatically Hashem's word. No. The purpose of our mission here in the world is to connect ourselves, including our minds, our understandings, our personalities, and bringing it to taking part in the shir. And looking forward, B'ezrat Hashem, next week seeing you again. Shavua Tov.